Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a lead fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti, and I've been fortunate that this year I've been interviewing some of the new lead fellows. You know, it's the highest honor within this lead and green building movement. And today I've got John Ambert here. He's out in San Diego, California, and look forward to kind of unpacking his story. So John, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well. Charlie, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, no, just plenty busy. I don't like to use that word. I like to say highly productive, but you know, let's kind of learn more about you, man, and how you got to where you are today. And so take us back. You know, John, where'd you grow up and go to school?
Yeah, cool. So I grew up in San Diego. I was a little beach rugrat around here. So I grew up surfing, playing soccer, some baseball sports, and I was doing a lot of skiing and mountaineering in Tahoe and Mammoth, Eastern Sierras, a lot of camping as a kid. So, you know, I grew up in the outdoors essentially a lot. And San Diego's got a very outdoor-minded focus. So, you know, that kind of drove a lot of my activities from youth to maybe 18, I would say. And then from that point, I looked to college. And then in college, I went to school in San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, fantastic state school here in California. It's got a really beautiful outdoor open environment, big backward facing open space right behind the campus where a lot of interesting construction and research kind of was done out there. So Cal Poly was like really where the nexus of like education and environment kind of happened for me, and it's helped me solidify my desire to be digging into sustainable environments, kind of this blend of studying architecture and digging in on, you know, the architectural, the structural, mechanical kind of components of buildings, and then also blending it with outdoor environments and bringing the outdoors in, kind of like finding ways to integrate and naturally blend into the surrounding environment. So, yeah.
I can't wait to learn more, because I know you have the architecture background, but you're working for a large construction company. But that region, man, where you went to college, last time Greenville was in Los Angeles, I rented a car and drove the Pacific Coast Highway from San Francisco to LA, took the weekend and went right through that area. So amazing there. So yeah, let's talk about, you know, the college there, Southern California. Well, getting up the coast a little bit, you know, how'd you know architecture? And then if you could kind of connect the dots, even when you got out of college, what was the job market like? Where'd you get your start?
Yeah, architecture was interesting. I was really focused on business at Berkeley and UCLA and USC, and Poly was on the list. And to go to Poly, you had to apply for a major. The other schools, you could apply undecided. So I basically went for architecture because it was this beautiful blend of math and physics and art, kind of those things that I was interested in, excelled at. So that's kind of where I landed. And when I got accepted into the program, I learned how prestigious it was. I didn't really understand that at the point of entry. So I was kind of advised by my local teachers to go get after it. And, you know, as such, that's kind of where I was able to find a niche. Poly had this really wonderful curriculum where it was very much learned by doing. You know, we were in shop, we were out in Poly Canyon working on different kind of installations, really working with materials and kind of hacking them, so to speak. So getting those foundations young really allowed us to kind of learn to fail, you know, and that learn to fail was really valuable for me to dig in on, you know, understanding how things come together, and when we don't, the why, and digging into the why. So that was really foundational. And I'm very thankful for my schooling and my mentors at Poly. I was there for 5 years. And after that 5-year program, I went over to a commercial architecture firm in the East Bay called Flynn, Craig & Grant. They focused mostly on big box. And so, you know, right out of college, I was doing parking lot design and ADA accessibility bathrooms and truck turns and, you know, the kind of grunt work that we do as architects right out of the gate, just learning, you know, the fundamentals. But I was also Ironically, while I was in school, my last year of school, one of my teachers brought the LEED program to me. And he said, if you're interested in sustainability, this is a program you should master. And so before I even left college, I earned my AP. And this was old version 1, I think, or maybe it was version 2. I don't quite remember that far back. But I used that in my first job. And so right away, I was the in-house sustainability resource for this architecture firm, working on big box or kind of mixed-use developments in the East Bay, and helping them work through approval processes with entitlement in different jurisdictions around the East Bay, and mitigating the environmental impacts of the projects by either pursuing LEED or implementing kind of sustainable design practices. So a very interesting opportunity to come in as a rookie, but also to be a subject matter expert, so to speak, right out of the gate.
Well, I love the early influences, being an outdoors person in your childhood. And then, talk about a good mentor, a good teacher, professor. Hey, you go all in on LEED. And so I don't know if that person's still around, but you got to reach back out and say, hey, I'm a LEED fellow now. So you got to, if you haven't done that, it's your homework, man. It's amazing. So any other mentors, though? A mentor's different. It could be someone you look up to, maybe you don't always have access to, they've influenced you, or it could be someone that opens some doors, literally. But anyone else you want to give a shout out to that's kind of helped you along the way?
Yeah, one of my founding mentors was Bill Reed. And it wasn't that I knew him, it was that I followed him and read his material and kind of understand his philosophy around design. It helped me really ground myself in like, what is integration? What is integrative design? Be able to apply the metrics and not just a rating system, just to dig in on the process. Pauly really strongly encouraged us to learn by doing, and a key proponent of that was Buckminster Fuller. And digging in kind of structural and lifestyle, and like looking at geodesic and finding the different attributes that are ways to explore architecture and its connection to the environment. So those two really were important to me. A couple other shout outs I got to throw out there. Bob Berkebile. I worked at BNIM a couple years later after my experience in the Bay. And that was a beautiful experience at BNIM. So I got to work with Bob directly. I got to integrate with him on multiple projects because, again, I was one of the sustainability experts on the team. And so I'd be shopped around to different projects that he was working on. Bob is a big teddy bear, just a wonderful human being. He just want to give him a big hug and, try to squeeze all the knowledge and passion out of him. So, he had that tragic experience where there was a collapse of a scaffolding in a building, and one of the buildings that BNI designed, and it resulted in the death of a large number of people. It was one of the largest deaths by architecture in the U.S. So he had this kind of rebirth, so to speak. And through that process, he found sustainable design and found, looking at environmental impact and integration with the environment. So Bob has since then dedicated his entire life to sustainable design and high performance buildings. And he exemplifies it in every step of the way. Every conversation he has, every note he takes is really focused on minimizing the impact on the planet. So just really awesome human being. I got one more. His name is Doug Cott. If you don't know Doug, you should. Doug Cott is, in my mind, one of the most intelligent and empathetic human beings in my world. He has been a mentor for me for years and years and years. He was the executive director of the San Diego Green Building Council for quite some time, and he helped kind of shape and form my attitudes towards architecture, design, sustainability, and really just being a good human. So he has really helped me from a volunteering standpoint, a mentorship, a lot of education standpoint. Doug was also one of my sponsors as a LEED fellow. So I'm incredibly grateful to him and his experience. And all your listeners, I highly recommend go out, find Doug Cott, give him a big hug and a handshake, because he is a person you need to meet.
Great shout out, man. Thank you for that. Might have him on the podcast. That'd be amazing. So, as you look back a little bit more, you've put together this green building career. In a minute, we'll connect the dots on the shift from architecture to construction. But when you look back, what are some things that stand out? What are some of your proudest accomplishments?
Yeah, I have had the opportunity to touch 100 or over 100 buildings now. So I've touched like almost every building type out there, and size and scale. I mean, very small, from a small residential ADU to 500,000 square foot or million square foot hospitals. So I've really had this beautiful experience as a sustainability professional to touch every type of unique building type and size. And I think that's very specific to sustainability, it gives you this opportunity to engage at this variety of scales that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have as a traditional architect or working in construction or, being on the owner side. You kind of do one type, one size. So I'm very thankful for that. One of my greatest personal achievements, I think, was the Wounded Warrior project in Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. This was the first LEED Platinum building for the U.S. military. And this was a project that was done by Balfour Beatty. And at that time, it was CSCA, the architecture firm that I was working with. And we were able to take a project that was to meet some of the minimum criteria of LEED certification and push it to platinum just by implementing some of those build, read, integrative design principles into the process. We got in early. We made a competitive bid in the RFP proposal in the RFP process to get to the LEED Gold. And then we had this pathway towards platinum. And so this BEQ, or Barracks Enlisted Quarters, basically housing facility for 200 wounded Marines, was constructed with this idea that we were going to be moving towards gold certification with an intent to get to platinum. And through that process of working really deeply with the design build team, trying to explore every single pathway for sustainability and those beautiful synergies that overlap across them, I was able to drive that project forward to hit the platinum threshold with really minimal cost impact to the team. That project then became a model for the campus. And that campus of 3 buildings all then received LEED Platinum certification and went through that same process. So that became the first LEED Platinum campus for the U.S. military. And it was a really exemplary project that kind of shaped the way the Marine Corps kind of puts out bids and changed from that point forward. It was about 2008 to 2012 or 13, changed how all those buildings in that development timeline, when the economy was kind of in the tank, but the military was building significantly, changed how they all started to achieve LEED certification and the levels at which the LEED certification was attained. So I'm very proud of it, very thankful for the team, and very much enjoyed the process.
Man, what a great story. And I'm hearing, he did it economically. You showed him it's possible, and that integrated approach. And it had some legacy to it, not just one building, but the campus and now the beyond. So, and obviously, LEED fellow, I mean, you can test into some of the LEED credentials, but not this, right? It's peer nominated and it's pretty competitive. And so, 100 projects, some of these big platinum buildings. But what does LEED fellow mean to you, John?
Yeah, the fellowship's exciting. The fellowship is a milestone for me, having worked on sort of different things, just to be able to be recognized for the work and to be able to find that that level of appreciation by the industry. We work hard. We're appreciated by our clients. We're appreciated by our teams, but we don't necessarily have that level of achievement that we look at. And so, just like the AIA has a fellowship, I'm very thankful that LEED and the USGBC have that same fellowship. It really gives us a tool to demonstrate subject matter expertise and to separate ourselves from, those that are working or those that are learning. Because LEED and the AP and even the designations within, they really just explain the focus of somebody's efforts. If you were to look at a licensure and you would see somebody who's got a PE, or maybe they're a registered architect, that licensure kind of demonstrates that level, that next level of achievement. I'm not just practicing, although we are always practicing. I'm not just in the practice. I've kind of gotten to this point where I'm licensed and have met that performance criteria to be recognized as a licensed individual. LEED has some of those designations, but it doesn't have that same accoutrement. It doesn't have that same ability to delineate those that are, exemplary in the field. So the fellowship really makes me feel like I've, like my efforts were for good things. And I am proud of that. And I'm using that to continue to exemplify, expertise within the field, be it in architecture, be it in construction, be it in mentorship or education opportunities around my community. I get to kind of go forward with this new title, so to speak, or this new moniker to say that, I have exemplified what it takes to be a green building professional in the space. So I'm really thankful.
Well said, man. Welcome to the club. The green jacket's in the mail. Okay. So welcome to the club. So connected dots here in this career, you spent a lot of time in architecture, then you added on all the sustainability, and then you've been getting into real estate and now construction. So kind of connected dots, show us how this has evolved for you and get us up to even current day.
Yeah, cool. really unique pathway, I got to say. As a green building professional, there's not one clear-cut path. I think other green professionals, green building professionals would also understand that. A lot of times we act as one role, and then we shift and we play another role. And then we shift again, play a third role, and all those roles kind of round out together. So, I started in the traditional architecture flow. I worked for a company in the East Bay, transferred to a company in San Diego that did the DoD military work. This was CSCA. I worked there for 4 years as a traditional project architect, doing drawings, doing CA, working on projects for the military, a lot of Camp Pendleton projects. But I was also the subject matter expert for sustainability in-house. I did a lot of different LEED certified buildings during that time. Once that came to a natural expiration, I shifted over to BNIM Architects. And I worked as a project architect. That's where I got my license. That's where I started cutting my teeth as an architect. But also that's where I dug in deeper on daylighting, natural ventilation, integrated controls, and like real deep green design. Finding pathways for electrification, finding pathways for zero energy. That's where I really started to fall in love again with it, and not just the rating system, but all the things, all the synergies between things. I worked at BNIM for about 4.5 years, and then I switched to the consulting side, and I jumped into sustainability consulting as an architect, working on projects for large companies, large portfolios, UC system, kind of doing a range of sustainability implementation, from buildings to campuses to cities and climate action planning to counties, and then looking at national policy and trying to find ways to integrate and support incentives for national policy. So I worked at DNV, Det Norsk Veritas, underneath Doug Cott for about 5.5 years. And in my time of working as an architect and working as a consultant, I got to see some of the companies that I admired. One of the companies that I admired most was DPR Construction. DPR, I had worked on a project with them and BNIM for Qualcomm. We worked on this really beautiful campus of 2 buildings, 500,000 square foot office and lab, and a 60,000 square foot conference, dining, and health center. Both of the LEED certified projects, green roof, natural ventilation, natural daylighting, really just beautiful integration of materials. I had this respect for DPR and their craft and also their culture. DPR's got this fantastic way of building up people. Our motto is respect the individual and change the world. So I've always had this thing in my mind where I wanted to get back to DPR. I didn't have a clear-cut pathway. And when I stepped out from architecture into consulting and started to kind of master the space of providing information, regardless of whatever my role was, I began to look towards the construction side and be able to come, around the horn, so to speak, and work from the implementation side of construction. So I started to integrate with some of the folks here, reach back out to some of my old contacts. DPR is around the corner from my neighborhood. So I was able to, connect locally and find a pathway back to the company. And now I'm here working as a subject matter expert on a variety of our building types across the country. And I'm excited. It's where the rubber meets the road here in construction, where things get done. And it's this beautiful opportunity to influence cost, to influence quality, and to speak to sustainability as safety, because it really is, zero harm. We're trying to make zero harm on our people and our planet. So it's been a great journey, and I'm happy to keep pushing the torch forward here.
No, man, thanks for connecting all the dots and where you're at. It sounds like just a great opportunity there for you, man. I'm excited for you. So I love to ask LEED fellows like yourself or just green building experts, what's next? If you had a crystal ball, what are you reading up on, or what are you excited about that's maybe coming at us in this kind of green building movement?
Yeah, well, I'm personally very excited about this revival around health-centered design. This focus on making buildings for people and not just buildings for building's sake. I think we've been designing buildings in the same way for too long, and we just aren't focused on making them spaces for people to connect with the world around them and to be productive and to be happy. So I really feel that COVID helped to drive us to rethink how we live and work in buildings. And this idea that health is now at the forefront of our design criteria. It's a beautiful thing. And it really is going to make better spaces for us in our lives and all the people around us. I'm really excited about environmental impact and how that's come forward through life cycle assessment. I think life cycle is this new space where we're starting to integrate carbon math and accounting for the impact of our processes onto building materials. I think that's got a lot of potential, and it's going to take some time for us to really solidify a process in which values this idea that carbon can be accounted for, can be offset, that energy and carbon intersect, that it all is carbon essentially, and that we're finding pathways to minimize, how much embodied carbon and how much operational carbon we use in the process of creating a building or renovating one. And last but not least, I really am, super excited about this idea of finding pathways for people to explore living building materials, natural building materials like mushrooms or silica or different shells or other kind of materials that are not typical, not concrete, steel, wood, and glass, but other naturally occurring materials that we can explore as people to create different building types and to minimize sick building syndrome and minimize things that come from our traditional ways of building. So I think that's got a lot of potential. Growing buildings, this idea of growing buildings out of materials, I think it's very, very fascinating, and I'm super excited to explore that with DPR. So yeah,
those are three great trends. Thanks for giving us a peek there. I totally agree with all of those. I'm spending a lot of time myself on embodied carbon, that shift from operating carbon to embodied carbon. Well, John, what would you say is your specialty or gift?
I was thinking about this one. I think there's something about my ability to connect with people that allows me to work well with them. I've found the authenticity of the connection is one of the single most important things into motivating people to do better. And I feel like my role on this planet is to help shape the hearts and minds of people and try to help us understand that we are all on one blue marble floating through space, and we kind of need to take care of it. So I really appreciate my ability to find that connection, to find that authentically, and to explore that at its true value. I think everything else is kind of noise, and I think that it's allowed me to kind of supersede some of the maybe ego-driven or maybe challenging aspects of money and power in our society, and really just kind of focus on values. Like you have your values, my values, we have similar values. How do we overlap those values, and how do we use that to our advantage as a team, as a group, as a state, a nation, as a world? And so I think that's really helped me work through challenges and find opportunities with teams to do good work. And so I lean on that. I lean on communication and trying to find different, more effective ways to communicate authentically, and just try to use that to do good work and create great teams.
That's great, man. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's a tough question. So how about any good habits or routines, rituals? What keeps you on point?
What keeps me on point is being in flow state. And what I mean about flow state is being in that space where you are active and not thinking, allowing your body to just go through the natural motions of the exercise. Whether it is exercise, for me, it's snowboarding. I'm just in love with snowboarding. It's one of my favorite things to do. Something about the gravity and the no thinking and the natural environment that just sets me solid. So snowboarding, surfing, those two things that kind of allow me to drop into that flow state, just go with it and just connect to the natural energies around me. That's been very helpful. Outside of those two things, I find that yoga and meditation are my two go-tos. Finding the yoga space keeps me centered, brings me back to breath, brings me back to my feet where I'm standing in the moment, keeps me present, gives me that me time. We all need some me time. So, that 1 hour yoga that I do gives me that opportunity to work and also rest and take time for me. And then meditation, finding just a short amount of time to sit with myself and in silence and just kind of eliminate the noise, eliminate the questions, that big to-do list, put it aside, all those external influences. I just try to put them aside for a second and just try to sit with myself and listen and allow it to kind of percolate. And then everything just kind of settles down, and it helps me kind of find my center and be able to say, okay, I got this, and move forward with it. So yeah, flow state, yoga, meditation, repeat.
That's a repeat, man. I love it. Well, how about bucket list? As you get to know me more, I'm a fan of the bucket list. I'm not sure if there's any travel or adventure or write a book. I don't know. What are a couple things on the bucket list?
Yeah, I have a Patagonia journey on my bucket list. I really definitely want to get down there and see it before we see some major climate change. Patagonia and the Amazon are kind of like relatively close together. So that's also on my list. Just go out in the jungle, witness the change, witness the activities that are happening. I'm an active surfer, snowboarder, so I try to find different regions around the country and the world that have great surf and have great snow. As we know, the U.S. West is losing a lot of its snowpack year after year after year, so we have to go to different places. Same thing goes with our oceans. Our oceans are becoming more and more polluted and more challenging in terms of loss of sand and loss of beaches. And so waves and snow are disappearing from our planet. So my bucket list is to continue getting as many waves and as much powder as I can find across the entire world. So South America, Europe, little Middle East is on my bucket list. I want to go over to Dubai, kind of explore some of that, over there. The wall that's being built, that amazing project out there is really exciting. So I'm interested in that. But yeah, just to continue to explore and appreciate the cultures and the natural environments of the world.
Great bucket list, man. Thanks for sharing. Because that's what the podcast is about. How'd you get to where you are? Others can kind of relate, and you're kind of inspired to hear with some of these stories and just what makes you successful. So just a few more questions here, John. Is there a book, podcast, a documentary, anything you'd recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, Young Pueblo. Young Pueblo is one of my favorite authors. He's got this really beautiful book out called Lighter. But previously to that, his book is called Clarity and Connection. That's one of my favorites. And then Inward. He's got this lovely series. Really, really killer. So highly recommend go check out Young Pueblo. It is not about sustainability. It's about self. It's about finding self, finding connection, finding pathways to, engage in life in a real tactful way. So I think Young Pueblo is a great one. I'm also reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, trying to shift a mindset around habits and small habits to make great ones, implement good processes to be a better person, to influence high performance teams. Really helpful. And then on my reading list is Good to Great, as one of DPR's well-known books. This is by Haynes Collins. Good to Great, really trying to explore pathways of creating high performance teams, but also high performance environments. Not just the project, but the people and the space, like the whole activity of expanding on something good and making it better. So yeah, I got a big reading list I got in mind, but right now I always turn back to Young Pueblo. It's like if I'm having a hard day, grab that book. Clarity and Connection is my favorite, but I'm reading Lighter, and I love it. It's beautiful stuff.
Well, I'm going to put links to those books in the podcast show notes. So good tips. And hey, man, cool. Atomic Habits, I love it. The habit stacking and Good to Great. Yeah. Just if anyone has any inkling of just business, entrepreneurship, or intrapreneurship. And I see a lot of that here too, John, in our discussion. All right, last couple things. Is there anything we should have known a little earlier in your career?
I think what happens in career pathways is that people who have gone through their exercise, their own journeys, are saying, this is the way. You start as a rookie, and then you move up as the next level up, and then you kind of get into project management. And project management, you become licensed, and from licensure, you get into more into project management. It has this like structure. And I would say there's not a one size fits all. Choose your own path. Do whatever you think is right. Don't be discouraged by others who say you have to do a certain thing a certain way. There is a million ways to do things. And I'm an example of that. I would say that I learned sustainability in college, went traditional architecture, jumped into consulting. Now I'm in construction, and I'm dabbling with real estate on the side. So like the intent is that I have this whole experience. And so don't get pigeonholed. Don't go down a route that you think is the only route, or people are telling you is the only route. That's just their narrow perspective. There's many routes. There are many ways to do things. I would say read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts, attend cool conferences, talk with people, have authentic connections, and explore. Don't expect a school to provide you with information, or don't expect one job to provide you with all the information. the universe is a wealth of knowledge and you have to get it. You have to seek it and explore it. So the idea that it is to be given to you is false. It is to be received through work. You have to go out and get it. So that's the only way that you can connect to it and get the values. And I would say have more fun. Don't feel like something has to be a certain way. If you're not enjoying your job, if you're not enjoying your education, stop immediately. Go and do something else. Enjoy the time we have on this planet because it's short, but it can be very sweet if you dig in.
Man, a lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets here. I hope the listeners are enjoying this. Last question. Let's say someone is listening that, because sometimes on here I get lead fellows that listen to the podcast and they message me on LinkedIn, Charlie, man, and I was listening to John and that just lit a spark. I kind of needed that encouragement. Or sometimes it's someone that's newer to this green building and healthy building movement. And, maybe they're just now jumping in. So in closing, John, what words of encouragement do you have for someone that's just now jumping in?
It's exciting. This is an exciting time to be part of sustainability. I would say this is the most excited I've ever been about it. And it's not just because of the fellowship, it's because I actually see the enjoyment of people and the industry starting to uptake things. We're seeing a lot of beautiful policy come forward about supporting sustainability. We're also seeing a lot of need. We're seeing a lot of environmental catalysts that are driving this forward. So there's no time like the present. Get in, get your hands dirty. And start to learn because we all need to do this together. It can't just be one person. It's got to be all of us in the collective mindset to get us to save this beautiful blue marble that we're floating on through space. So get involved, find different ways, volunteer, engage with people, talk and learn because that's how we're going to collectively salvage our humanity. So get engaged.
I love this encouragement. Man, I got to know you. Got to hear some pretty cool and funny stories. And to everybody listening, hey, connect with John on LinkedIn. Let him know what you thought of the podcast. And big congrats on Lead Fellow. And look forward to seeing you soon, John. Thanks for spending time with us.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I appreciate you having me on.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.